I was going to ask you about the Somalian walk, and what's the big message?
The big message is we want to raise consciousness and raise money for the famine relief, and the walk is going to be is co-sponsored by, and will go to the Red Cross of Portland to be transported to Somalia through Red Cross channels. And
I mean, what's going on in Somalia?
Starvation, mass starvation. It's the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today, and it's in Somalia proper, and then in those areas of Kenya and Ethiopia that have majority Somali populations.
And what's this caused by?
Well, the drought part is nature made. The famine part is human made. Western companies so convinced Somali farmers to grow a single crop economy, which was sesame, so that they could make sesame oil, that they were able to... Hello? Hello? It was Jackie.
We were talking about the companies convinced them to grow sesame seeds.
So they did, and then I don't know why. Sorry, he was sold off. There was nothing to replace it, and they didn't plant it in anything else until the next season, which was going to be more sesame.
What about warfare, though?
What?
There's a lot of warfare going on.
A lot of warfare. And a lot of warfare on top of single crop economies. Single crop economies fail.
What's the solution to all this?
The solution to famine is diversifying your crops and not selling your crops to somebody else who can pay you more money, but diversifying it so that if one thing happens to one crop, you have those others to fall back on. I mean, you know, the famous Irish potato famine was
right.
not a famine, but the Irish, it was not a famine. Famine is human-made, and the Irish had always depended upon the potato. It's a very nutritious and healthy thing, but the blight on the potato wiped out their only crop. And if that wasn't bad enough, the cattle, because the Irish had been forced by the English onto small plots of land to provide more land for the cattle that were owned by absentee landlords in England, the cattle was all there, but the Irish didn't own the cattle, and they would call and they would communicate to England that they needed food and England would respond by sending soldiers.
Beautiful.
So it's it's that colonial situation all over again. Only
What's the solution though? I mean, what can we do for Somalia?
right now,
Yeah.
well, we have to feed them first. That's the bottom line. Feed them first, then ask questions.
Now, I know in previous situations when we send food relief in one of these warlord situations, a lot of the aid seems to get diverted.
And the people who are in control of large areas of the south of Somalia are those ruthless Al-Shabaab who are connected to Saudi Arabia and Wahhabism big time. During their brief reign, they destroyed all of the Sufi shrines.
Wow.
Which most Somalis are Sufi Muslim of one sort or another. And they don't let outside agencies bring food in. So I don't know what's going to be on that front, but there's plenty of Somalis who are starving in areas that are not in the control of Al-Shabaab. Like especially the Dadaab refugee camp in the Somali part of Kenya, which is the largest refugee camp in the world. And also in the Ogaden region of Ethiopia, where the government of Ethiopia is already committing genocide against those people. So the famine just increases the number of deaths.
So we could feed the refugees anyway.
So we could feed the refugees in Kenya and Ethiopia, and in large parts of Somalia, because Al-Shabaab's been driven out of Mogadishu. And I think that they only control an area around Mogadishu and maybe a little more to the south. So in all other areas of the famine where Somalis live, they could get some food in. And then after you've fed them and, taken care of those most basic needs, then you work on the other stuff like a conflict settlement with the Al-Shabaab, if they will come to the table. And, if we try any other approach, we just create more enemies among the Somali people than we, just like in Afghanistan, with the Taliban. By being rough on the Taliban or rough on Al-Shabaab, we just create more supporters because America is so lowly thought of. The United States is so lowly thought of everywhere in the world.
It's too bad they didn't have oil over there. Then we'd probably be there in large numbers.
That's right. And they may have oil, but it just hasn't been discovered yet. Because they're not that far from Saudi Arabia.
No.
But the Saudi oil fields are over on the east side of Saudi Arabia, not on the west. Because the Saudi oil fields are in areas that are largely populated by Shia Muslims, not Sunni. And nobody hates the Shia like the Saudis and the Wahhabis.
Any final words, Wells?
Yeah, it's a privilege to be able to work on issues like this. I mean, I don't love all Somalis, but I love most Somalis that I've met. And I think every time I see pictures from the Dadaab refugee camp or starving Somali children, I think the children that I've known who are Somali here, and the adults who are good people, really good people. I'd much rather work with Somalis and Darfuris, and they're Muslim, because one of the things most Muslims in the world don't drink. So you don't have the problems that you have with people who come from southern Sudan or Rwanda, where they're mostly Roman Catholic, and this is in no way a bad reflection on the Roman Catholic Church, but the culture doesn't discourage drinking.
No.
So, and I always end up defending the Shia too, because they are so badly oppressed everywhere they live, except Iran, where they're the overwhelming majority, and now in Iraq, where they benefited from the U.S. invasion and occupation. But what we saw in Bahrain was like cruel repression with bringing in Saudi troops over the bridge to Bahrain. And nobody hates the Shia like the Saudis or the Wahhabis.
Amen.
And the Saudis have a lot of money.